Okay, I think we have a good amount of people now. I know Omar is in the meeting as well. So Omar, if you want to say anything before we begin, but the meeting's already in recording. So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to the latest Kumi Now online gathering. So the topic again today is going to be on family unification. The first part of our meeting is going to be dedicated to our guest Irene, and then please stay around after she leaves, as we will dedicate the rest of the time to doing action for Palestine, and then also continuing maybe the conversation we were having at the beginning. So before I start, as a reminder, we're being recorded, so please make sure your mic is off, and we will also have a Q&A session, so you can also put your questions in the chat as our speaker presents. So to introduce our speaker, I believe she's currently in the chat now. But Irene Touma is a Palestinian from East Jerusalem and currently working as a development director at HaMoked, which is the Center for the Defense of the Individual. She has 10 years of experience in the resource development field, and she is very deeply committed to human rights and possesses an in-depth familiarity within the Israeli-Palestinian context. And today she will be presenting on family unification in East Jerusalem and HaMoked's ongoing efforts to assist East Jerusalemites in accessing their residency rights. And so the presentation will also cover HaMoked's work in pushing for systematic change through principled litigation. So Irene, whenever you're ready, you'll have 30 to 40 minutes to speak, and then we'll also have a Q&A session for you as well. And let me know also if you need a co-host permission. Trying to see. I don't see you currently in the room. I see your name, but I can't see if you've unmuted or not.
Yes, now I'm unmuted. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. This is Irene Touma, Development Director of HaMoked, Center for the Defense of the Individual. I'm glad to be here with you all, and thank you for this invitation. I will start with a very brief introduction of what HaMoked does, what the organization does in general, and then focus on our work on residency rights and family unification in East Jerusalem. So HaMoked is an Israeli human rights organization providing free legal and paralegal aid to Palestinian victims of human rights violation living under the Israeli occupation. Since its founding 34 years ago, HaMoked has provided direct assistance to over 100,000 beneficiaries. We work on residency rights in East Jerusalem, including child registration, family unification, residency revocation. We also work on freedom of movement issues, including travel abroad, access to the seam zone, and travel to and from Gaza. Of course, this was before October 2023, before the start of the war. We also have a station where we work on detainee rights, including tracing detainees, prison visits, conditions of detention, and violence and torture. We also combat collective punishment, such as punitive home demolitions and closure of areas, whether in East Jerusalem or in the seam zone area. In addition to the individual assistance, we are filing principled petition to challenge systematic violation of human rights, such as the route of the separation wall, night arrests of children, and the law denying family unification of Jerusalem. The good news that the majority of our cases are resolved successfully. Let's say from 65% to 70% of our cases, despite the bureaucratic procedures, are resolved successfully. Some take more time than others, but in the end, we try to resolve it successfully. Now I'll start talking about family unification and residency rights of East Jerusalemite. I'm a Palestinian from East Jerusalem. I was born and raised in the city and still living in the city. So I'm a good example of what I'm gonna give you now. So I'll start with a history about the status of East Jerusalemite and the status of East Jerusalem in general. Following Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem in 1967, the city's Palestinian inhabitants were given the status of permanent residents of Israel, granting them the right to reside in the country and access social rights according to the Israeli law. In practice, these residents are required to repeatedly prove their center of life in East Jerusalem to the Ministry of Interior and to the National Insurance Institute whenever they wish to access their basic services in general. And these agencies conduct investigations and inquiries explicitly designed to gather evidence for the purpose of revoking residency status and eligibility for social rights. So we can say that this permanent residency status can be everything but permanent. These practices originate from a 1988 judgment in which the High Court of Justice ruled that the status of Palestinian permanent residents from East Jerusalem is no different to any foreign immigrant who received residency status in Israel following an immigration process. No distinction was made between people who moved to Israel from another country and the indigenous Palestinian population who are born and raised in the city. The implication of this ruling is that unlike citizens, permanent residents are at risk of losing their status in Israel if they move abroad for 7 years or longer, or if they receive residency status elsewhere in the world. Among Israel's many laws and practices that restrict Palestinian residency rights, one of the most harmful is the Citizenship and Entry into Israel law, which is also called the Temporary Order, which suspends the process of family unification between residents or citizens of Israel and their Palestinian spouses, who are originally from the West Bank or from Gaza. Before this law was enacted in 2003, residents and citizens of Israel could submit family unification applications on behalf of their spouses, and this long process could eventually lead to permanent residency status for the spouse. But since the law's enactment, spouses originally from the West Bank or Gaza cannot receive any formal residency status in Israel or in East Jerusalem. This discriminatory legal context renders approximately the approximately 10,000 families in this category, like the East Jerusalem families. First, they face the constant threat that even the temporary stay permits will be denied, leading to forcible transfer and displacement, or forcing one spouse to live in the homes in Jerusalem, but illegally. Second, in Jerusalem or in Israel in general, illegally. Second, these families confront the denial of access to social welfare rights, schooling for the children, and equal opportunities in the pursuit of employment and livelihoods. Finally, women originally from the West Bank or Gaza sometimes find themselves trapped in abusive relationships as they depend on the Jerusalemite husband for their residency status and their continued ability to remain in the city with their children. Because this permanent residency status or spouses and women in a family unification process need to prove to the Ministry of Interior, need to renew their military permits every year, and the Jerusalemite spouse or the Israeli spouse should renew this for her. So if he doesn't do this, they'll find themselves in an abusive relationship and can lose her status and also her ability to stay in the city and to stay with her children in Israel. Now, this law resulted in a MOI policy, or a Ministry of Interior policy, which HaMoked and other organizations refer to as the quiet deportation, to seek out Palestinian residents of East Jerusalem who lived outside the city for extended periods of time, and retroactively revoke their residency status without any prior notice or appeal process. Now, we submit freedom of information requests to the Ministry of Interior, and throughout the years, we have information throughout those responses that between the years 1967 to 2023, Israel revoked the status of 14,808 Palestinians from East Jerusalem on the basis of that their status has expired. HaMoked led the legal battle against this policy, and our litigation resulted in substantial improvements, and that at some point the Supreme Court stated that Palestinians are an indigenous population in Jerusalem with a unique status, which is something good for East Jerusalemites. Now, after many litigations, a Palestinian who moves to the West Bank is no longer considered having to move abroad for the purpose of residency revocation, and those who have lost their residency can apply to have it reinstated through a 2-year bureaucratic process. But also still, many still live in fear of losing their status in their home city and are forced to make major decisions with considerations in mind, considerations that the Ministry of Interior or the National Institute would revoke their residency status. Also, there are other reasons for revoking residency statuses of East Jerusalemites, such as breach of allegiance to the State of Israel, which can also be considered a collective punishment, because if somebody is accused of breach of allegiance, residency status of the family of this person can be revoked, and has many implications on the family in general. I'm not going to get into this because this is not our topic, but just for you to know. Now, these difficulties in accessing residency rights are compounded by the already vulnerable population of East Jerusalem. It is one of the poorest in the region. Most families rely on a single income to support an average of 4 or 5 family members. And many do not have access to healthcare. Also, claims to the state for financial support are met with suspicion and lengthy investigation by the national insurance to prove center of life and prove their connection to the city. And in many cases, it's denied or left uncompensated. HaMoked, for 34 years since its founding, has provided legal and paralegal aid to the Palestinian community in East Jerusalem to access their residency and social rights, and to help in child registration and family unification. HaMoked began providing support in this area in response to requests from members of the community who struggled to independently navigate the system that is put by the Ministry of Interior and the National Insurance Institute. Through ongoing contact with hundreds of beneficiaries each year, we are able to identify the new policies and practices that deny Palestinians their residency and social rights and challenge them, whether legally or paralegally. Now, for the past 2 years, HaMoked has been trying to cancel the law denying Palestinian family unification, which is the citizenship and entry into Israel law, which is also called the temporary order. I will give you a brief, or not a brief, it's an extended update on what we are working on regarding this law. So in March 2022, the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, passed the renewed citizenship and entry into Israel law. This law is renewed every year with the same components, which are, I'll say it briefly, that West Bank and Gaza spouses of Israeli citizens or residents are not entitled to any residency status in Israel. Spouses over the age of 35 for the man and for the wife 25 can receive a stay permit from the Israeli military, which must be renewed every year. Also, children who are considered residents of the OPT can only receive Israeli residency up to the age of 14. If a child is not registered before the age of 14, then they will only receive a military stay permit and not a stay permit, like the spouse. This is a temporary order and is renewed every year. One of the small improvements of this law over the previous version of it, it was that a West Bank or a Gaza spouse over age 50 who has been in the family unification process for over 10 years may be granted residency status, an A5 visa, which must be renewed every 2 years, which also guarantees social welfare rights. And the ministry stated that there are around 1,500 such couples. However, they added a quota on humanitarian applications for status upgrade to be set at 58 applications each year, whereas there was no such quota before. And the new law states that it applies from July 2022, retroactively denying the rights of people who filled applications over the past months, like starting from March till July. HaMoked in April 2022 filed a principled petition together with other human rights organizations such as ACRI, the Association for Civil Rights in Israel, and PHR Israel, which is the Physicians for Human Rights Israel. Together, we try to challenge the renewed citizenship and entry into Israel law. We argued that the law establishes a prohibited discrimination between Arab Palestinian citizens and residents of Israel and Jews when it comes to the right to family life in Israel and East Jerusalem. A year after, the state responded to our petition and announced that they have amended the procedure so that women over the age of 40 who have been in a family unification process for over 10 years will be able to receive temporary residency. That was great news because this means they will receive an Israeli ID. They can drive a car in Israel, and they are entitled to social welfare rights. And there were 1,300 women in this category, which are entitled to this upgrade. The state also announced that the law would no longer apply to people registered in the Palestinian Population Registry, but who never lived in the OPT. These people will be able to receive residency status. Now, the latest update was a hearing that was held at the High Court of Justice 2 weeks ago, in which the court issued an order nisi, shifting the burden of proof to the state to justify its position. This was very surprising to us. This is surprising, but also encouraging successful development. The state has now 60 days to explain why this law should not be cancelled. Specifically because it harms spouses and children who have been in the family unification process for a long time. And now we're gonna wait for the 90 days so that the state can respond. They might ask for an extension. However, HaMoked acknowledges that this progress still falls short for meeting our objectives, and our efforts to petition for the complete, we're still trying to cancel this law, and we firmly believe it advances a racist purpose. That's it for me. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Yes.
Thank you, Irene, for the very informative presentation. There was a question in the chat actually about what the status of a Palestinian Israeli citizen married to a Jewish Israeli citizen would be. And then I guess related to your topic is more also on the, East Jerusalemite resident, and if they were to be married maybe to a Jewish Israeli citizen as well.
Yes, it's the same applies for if a person, whether Jewish or Palestinian, holds an Israeli ID or from East Jerusalem and wants to marry a Palestinian from the West Bank and Gaza, it's the same process. They should go through this family unification process and proving center of life, and they fall under this law.
Interesting. And my own question also, I was just curious in terms of post-October, has there been any challenges to the work of HaMoked in terms of campaigns, the legal work that you're doing? Has there been anything, just coming up that wasn't there before October?
The Ministry of Interior closed for 1 month after October 7th, 1 month and some days. So that meant that people who were in the family unification process and wanted to renew their stay permits had to live illegally in the city until they issued an automatic renewal for all spouses who are in this family unification process, that the stay permits will be renewed automatically until February 2024. Then they resumed receiving the public, and of course there are still many discriminating not policies but attitude towards those families, but it's passing now.
Okay. And then another question here is if there are any Israeli organizations or Jewish citizens supporting HaMoked. I know you mentioned partnerships with other human rights organizations as well. So if you want to elaborate a bit on like how your partnerships look like how do you guys work on legal cases together, things like that.
Our lawyers, together with the lawyers of, let's say, the Association of Civil Rights in Israel, or Physicians for Human Rights, or another organization called Deir Amim, that their work focus on on the rights of East Jerusalemites in the city, draft petitions, meet every let's say every month, and then we go to court together. One of us has to be the lead of the petition. And this is in general how we work. Also, our advocacy team, together with their advocacy team, meet every month and discuss our areas of work, and have updates on our current priorities, and discuss what we will be working on, so there will be no overlap of work. Yeah, that's in general.
Okay, thank you. And then if anyone else has, I know Randy, you have a lot of insightful comments about, oh yeah, Randy, maybe you have a question. I think you're muted, Randy.
Thank you for unmuting me. I saw that HaMoked also works a lot with people who are being displaced from their homes, home demolitions and things like that. With the increase in home demolitions that are occurring in neighborhoods like Silwan and others, are many of these people coming to you for assistance? And what kind of assistance can you offer to them?
Yes. HaMoked only focuses on combating punitive home demolition, which is the punitive home demolition is different than the house demolitions for building without permits or building without permissions. Our areas of work, or where we focus, is on the punitive home demolition, where one of the family member, whether the son, the brother, the spouse, has committed a fatal attack against an Israeli. Then the military orders a punitive home demolition for the house. And we combat this at court because we believe this is a collective punishment, and that's not that's against human rights.
And what success have you had in fighting those cases? Certainly, what we see in the news is that the army swoops in within a day or two and has destroyed the house.
There were very, very, very minor success in this area. 99% of our petitions are resolved unsuccessfully in this area, because, as you said, this is done within a few weeks, and the home is demolished, and also the judges at court do not want to make a statement against this punitive home demolition, because the Israeli public sees this as supporting terrorism, and not supporting the innocent and the family, or the innocent family that in many cases, or in 99% of the cases, they didn't know that their family member will go and commit a fatal attack. Yeah.
Thank you. One other question, if I may, before I turn this over to other people. I see that you work together to try to protect the rights of detainees. Yes. And once again, since October 7th, the number of detainees has gone up significantly, both from people in the West Bank as well as those who have been captured in the fighting in Gaza. And I'm wondering what kind of success stories you might have had. Our own Episcopal Church here in the United States took up the case of Layan Nasser from Bir Zaid, who of course is being held right now in a military prison in Israel, and we're very concerned about her.
What we do for the detainee rights is that we trace detainees. The family of the person who is being arrested calls HaMoked within the day after of arrest or whenever they know about us. And we are able to trace detainees within 24 hours. We have, let's say, connection to the military, and we are able to locate those Palestinians who are being arrested. We can only have information on the place of arrest or the place of interrogation, whether it's a military basis or a prison. And we give information to the family. 100% of our tracing requests from Palestinians from the West Bank are resolved successfully. We have information for the family to give within 24 hours for their family member who is being arrested. But families who are calling us from Gaza, which are many since the start of the war, we don't have answers. The military refuses to give us answers on the place of arrest for those people, Palestinians arrested from Gaza. So to answer your question, 100% success for Palestinians from the West Bank, we are able to trace them, and 0% success for Palestinians from Gaza. However, we have filed 4 mass habeas corpus petitions on behalf of Palestinians from Gaza who are being held by Israel. And we have achieved one minor success, which is to have an email address for the military where one of our lawyers can send an email to the military and check if they can visit the prisoner only if this prisoner is being held for more than 90 days, which is also a lot.
Oh my.
Yes. And so after 90 days, the military, on this email, they reply to us, and our lawyer can schedule a meeting with the prisoner. And we have met with them, with I think 18 prisoners since October 7th, and they are reporting a lot of violence and torture cases during arrest, during detainment, and the worst imprisonment conditions.
Arine, could you describe some of those conditions?
I'm not expert on this,
Okay.
and also, yeah, but many reports on torture and violence has been published, and those were from HaMoked after our lawyers meeting with those prisoners, whether the unlawful combatants, the Hamas combatants who were arrested and who were arrested during October 7th, or other prisoners from Gaza. But for the case of, yes, yeah, just to answer the case of this girl from Bir Zayt, since she's from the West Bank, we can only know the place of her, the prison where she's detained. She can call HaMoked, and HaMoked team can help her family. Or no, she cannot call HaMoked. The family can call HaMoked and can have an answer or on the place of her imprisonment.
Yeah, the family is aware of her imprisonment, and they're trying to get her lawyer to be able to visit her. Yeah, she's in a prison outside of Haifa.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Shukran.
You're welcome.
I have 2 more questions here in the chat, or 3 now. So the first one, I think you answered this a little bit already, Irene, but it's whether collective punishment is legal according to Israeli law. So I'll stop there, and then if you want to answer that.
No, according to Israeli law, collective punishment is not legal. That's why we try to challenge it in Israeli courts.
Okay.
And in some principal petitions, we are able to resolve these petitions successfully. And I'll give you one example of a family called Kunbar family. They are a family from East Jerusalem. One of the family member committed a fatal attack in Israel and killed 2 soldiers in 2017. The Ministry of Interior issued enacted a law not a law, a policy in which they want to revoke the residency status and stay permits of the family members. Since 2017, we tried to challenge this as a collective punishment, and that this is not legal to punish people for the behavior of other people, especially that it's the cousin of the cousin. And only 3 months ago, in 2024, we succeeded in stopping this from being enacted, and the family members who have had the state permits can have it again now after this long legal battle. So yes.
Interesting. Thank you so much. And then another question is it true that the Palestinian families are required to pay for all of the costs of the detainees' imprisonment, or they could lose their residency or ID in Jerusalem?
Is it true that the Palestinian families are required to pay for all the costs of the detainees' imprisonment? I don't think so, no.
And then
No.
I believe, have international observers been allowed to go into the prisons at all?
No.
So
Even
it's
the
usually,
ICRC.
yeah, it's usually only the lawyers then of the prisoners who can go.
No, not even all the lawyers. Only HaMoked's lawyers, and only for prisoners who are being detained for more than 90 days. Again, I'm not a specialist on this in this field. That's why I might not have accurate answers on prisoners' rights. But the ICRC is not allowed to go visit the prisoners, and yes, that's what I know.
And then the last question, I think, before we, you end with us, I'm just curious, if there are any campaigns or work from HaMoked that, the audience here can support, if there's anything you want to share about that.
Like, I would be glad to speak with any one of you who want to discuss possible ways of partnership. And I would be glad if you can refer our organization to individuals who are interested in our work and can support our work, whether by individual donations or institutional grants, because we need this assistance more than ever, especially with the change of policies of different countries, where they are shifting their grants from fields to another fields, or shifting their priorities. And our organization depends 100% on foreign aid. I don't want to say for 100%, but let's say 90% on foreign assistance from governments or from international NGOs, and also on 10% on individual assistance.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll put the link to the website again, because I know HaMoked does free legal aid, so this is really important that you support them.
Yes.
And thank you, Randy, you put the link actually to donate to HaMoked as well, so this is really helpful. But yeah, everyone, please thank Irene for coming to us today and speaking with us about this work. And thank you so much for the hard work that you're doing. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks to you, and thank you for listening.
Awesome. So you can leave for this session unless you have anything else to say, but this we're about to do an action session. So everyone else, you can stay with me and then we can talk a little bit about the current actions this week. But thank you again, Irene.
Thank you. Thanks to you. Bye.
Okay, so today we have two new actions. If you want to look at the old actions from previous weeks, they're still up, especially for the UK. I think the boycott barley campaign is still going on. But for the US, as you might know, there's a lot of news going on in the US right now with presidential elections and everything. But Netanyahu is planning to deliver an address to Congress on July 24th, so that's tomorrow. I believe he's already landed in the country, but several Palestinian organizations, and including Jewish Voice for Peace, have created an action so that you can demand the members of your Congress to reject Netanyahu's invitation. So I'll just link this right here. We might have shared this also in previous weeks, but since it's happening this week, we wanted to highlight this again. And then for World Action, we have an action to email FIFA Council members and ask them to red card Israel and suspend Israeli teams on the 31st August 2024 when they are meeting to specifically discuss Israeli sanctions. And you can find more information also in the chat here, which I've copied. So you can sign this. There's a form for you to sign. I'll also just copy and paste again the United Kingdom action that we've been using for the last few weeks. As this campaign is, they're asking you to pledge to close your account on September 12th if you have an account with Barclays Bank. And then there's also a form that you can sign to tell Barclays directly that you're boycotting them. And then, of course, I know Randy mentioned this again, but continuing to put pressure on the campaign for Layan Nasser's release, as well as other university students, as there has been more arrests in the coming weeks or in the last few weeks about this. So I have all the actions here, just copied and paste. If you want to do the actions with us in the last few minutes of this meeting, and then if you have other actions to share regionally, I know there's a lot going on in DC right now, today and tomorrow. So if you have any actions there that you want to invite people in this chat to come to or support, that would be great. Also, if it's helpful to you after you finish the action to just write in the chat that you finished that, that would also be nice to see that people are doing it while we're on call together. Well, Linda, I saw you put in the chat a question about Barclays Bank response. I'm not sure yet, but I can double check on this. And then maybe this can be like an update we can put on the newsletter if this is the case. But since I think the action is happening until September, it might be a while. And I think they're still trying to build momentum in the UK for this. So yeah. And then also I know we have more time than usual for we can end the meeting earlier as well, but if there's any specific like emotions or anything happening that you just want to share a little bit about, like, this is also a space to do that, and you can unmute yourself to talk. Carol just put some important links in the chat. I was trying to find those links as well, but she had mentioned Corey Bush and Hill Harper doing phone banking up to, I think, August 6th was, yeah. So there's links to this if you want to also just look into information, and you can call after the meeting is over. And I think Linda also asked about the Olympics ban. She says, I understand a decision has been delayed, so it doesn't interfere with the Paris Olympics. I'm not so sure about this information, so if anyone has any like information about the Olympics, this might be helpful.